co-founders of Israeli blockchain firm Orbs, are the target of a lawsuit by former partner Elad Arad. Orbs responded that the documents were released to them at the same time as the media and therefore haven't been reviewed. Arad is suing partners and related entities over the misallocation of his shares of the venture. No comments on the story from Mossad. Only 33 days until Funface deletes its Twitter account. I still cannot pronounce Pompolino's name. International privacy commissioners have come together to voice concerns over privacy risks posed by Facebook's Libra. In a joint statement, commissioners around the world remarked that while Facebook has made broad public statements about privacy, they have failed to specifically address the information handling practices that will be in place to secure and protect personal information. In an extensive list of questions, the group further seeks to reassurances that Facebook would only use the minimum amount of personal data that's required for the service and ensure lawfulness of the processing. The officials also commented on the lack of details in the white paper and requested further information, such as how much ETH for Libra and when Moon, before throwing sats into the project. Bitcoin is still up. IBM launches new blockchain network for supply management. In a surprise move, Big Blue has created yet another coalition-based supply chain system. A spokesperson from the company cited the perceived need for a sexier supply chain system, noting they're quite confident that they got it right this time. All hail Chad, and that is Dragonchain Newsflash.
Hey guys, this is David. Some of you might know me as Rexobus from the Dragonchain community, and I'm one of the developers on the apps team here at Dragonchain. And today I wanted to give you a quick demonstration of our identity management solution called Dragonfactor. So taking a look at the screen here, you'll notice that we've got just a simple landing page that will allow us to access the demo. And before we get started, I'm just going to open up the developer console on the right here so that as I go through, you can see a bit more of what's happening behind the scenes. Okay, so to access the demo, all we need to do is simply click on Factor right here. And if you look on the right-hand side, you'll notice a couple things just happen. First, the device, in this case our laptop, has generated a public and private key pair to be associated with our identity in the Dragonfactor system. Secondly, using our private key, we've created this signature where we've signed our public key with our private key. Now, the reason that we've done this is that we don't want our private key to leave this device. So when we create our new identity with the Dragonfactor system, we send over both our public key and this signature, and the Dragonfactor API is able to validate using our public key that this signature was signed using the private key belonging to that key pair. Now, once we've sent that information over to the Dragonfactor API, it will reply with this address, which is essentially our identifier within the system. So now that we've got our address, imagine that you're going to a new doctor's office for the first time. One of the first few things you always need to do is fill out an intake form. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see we've got a couple forms. So we're going to access this general practitioner form. This form was created with React JavaScript, but it can be written in any framework or any language. But for the sake of this video, we're just using React. And I'm just going to go ahead and start filling out this form. And obviously, we're not using any real information today. Now, this is one of the more tedious aspects of going to the doctor or going to the dentist. But it has to be done. All right, we've got a standard health plan, and there's our policy number. Okay, so when I click upload here, it'll take us to this confirmation page. Now, what I want to mention is that since this is the first time we've been to this doctor's office, and additionally, because of the first time we've interacted with the Dragonfactor system, being that we just created our identity not too long ago, all of this information is brand new to Factor. So when we hit this confirm information button, what's going to happen is all of this information is going to be encrypted with our private key on the device and then sent over to the Dragon Factor API, where each one of the form fields is associated with our identity as an independent factor. The other thing that's going to happen is that the provider, so in this case the doctor's office, the provider who also has an identity within Dragon Factor, albeit they have something a little different called a provider identity, they are also going to sign with their private key proof that they are the originators of this form data. So, if for whatever reason somebody needs to know the source of this data, they can see cryptographic proof that it did originate from this particular doctor's office. Okay, so now that we've done all that, we've submitted the form, we're good to go, and we can proceed with our appointment. Now, if I just rewind and take us back to the beginning where we can select our forms again, let's imagine that we're going back to the same doctor's office for a follow-up visit. So we're going to access that form once again, and you'll see that this time all of our information is pre-populated. That's because the device that we used, so in this case again, my laptop, since it has our public and private key information stored locally, all it has to do is then make a request to the Dragon Factor API, retrieve our encrypted data, and then decrypt it on the device using our private key. So it's just done that, and it's allowed us to save a ton of time filling out this form, which we otherwise would have had to do once again. So now we can simply skip the factor creation part, since these factors already exist, and submit that information back to the receptionist. Now, here's where it gets a little more interesting. Now, let's assume we've been referred to a specialist for some condition, a surgery or something. Now, because this specialist is also part of the Dragon Factor system, when we visit that office and are asked to fill out their intake form, you'll notice that many of the same fields that we've already filled out previously are also auto-populated at this specialist office. However, you will notice at the bottom there is this section where they're requesting information about our primary care physician. And because this information is new to Dragon Factor, we will only have to fill out this information, which I can do right now. Let's see, we got our phone number, and let's just give them our address. Okay, so now when I'm brought to the confirmation screen, the only new factors that will be created are the three new fields that we filled out. Because these factors already exist, they won't be created again. But I'll go ahead and confirm my information there. And once that's done processing, we'll have three new factors associated with our identity. So now, let's say we're going back to the same specialist again. You'll see that this information is now also stored by Dragon Factor, encrypted, and decrypted on the device using our private key. So
that was a quick demonstration of how Dragon Factor works conceptually. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and have a nice day.
It's crazy, JoJo's craziest merch sale ever! Get everything in Dragonchain merch! Get it all now during Crazy JoJo's craziest merch sale ever! JoJo's prices are insane! We are not undersold, we will not be undersold, we cannot be undersold, and we mean it! Get a JoJo shirt, get a Dragonchain sticker, get a hardware wallet, and get a limited edition JoJo while you still can! Go to merch.dragonchain.com. That's merch.dragonchain.com. Merch.dragonchain.com.
My name is Diego Zuluaga, and I'm a policy analyst at the Cato Institute, which is a free market public policy research organization in Washington, D.C. Sure. I mean, the industry has been undergoing a lot of change, and it's been in flux over the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of changes in the trends in terms of new token offerings and where they're basing themselves in terms of the jurisdiction that they choose, where the developers are. And after the boom in 2017, we've seen a lot of the activity move away from the United States and to other jurisdictions. And in the United States right now, which is a market I know best and which I study, the regulatory environment there, what I see is a bit of slowness in adapting to the trends that are happening everywhere else, and not yet a recognition of the many opportunities that blockchain technology does offer for applications both in terms of distributed ledgers in financial services, but also specifically crypto assets that can be used as exchange tokens or as security tokens or as products to or as instruments to acquire goods and services on decentralized networks. Well, I thought Commissioner Peirce was, as ever, provocative and very much original and unique in her contributions as a regulator. It's really refreshing to have her at the Securities and Exchange Commission because she comes from a very pro-innovation, pro-market perspective. And I think she recognizes the biased view that regulators have when it comes to new technology, where they tend to focus on avoiding harm at all costs, and they don't necessarily appreciate all the possible benefits that innovation brings. And I think being in that position, having that recognition of the regulatory mindset has been very helpful in terms of increasing the diversity of views at the SEC. I only wish that her commissioner colleagues and the staff at the SEC would take a similarly open-minded outlook.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I just should start by saying that my views represent my own views and not necessarily those of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commissioner or my fellow commissioners. I think the key takeaway is that we as regulators need to have an open mind toward innovation, and we need to have an open mind toward people who are thinking creatively about solving problems. And so at the SEC, we've taken one approach, but at that conference yesterday, we were able to hear from a number of other countries about how they're approaching blockchain and digital assets more generally. And I think it was a really productive discussion and shows that we all have a lot to learn from each other on this issue. Well, I think that we need to, and so that's what I'm hoping that we will do. We've spent a lot of time over the last few years trying to learn more about crypto and blockchain, and I think the benefit of that learning will ultimately translate into a little more clarity, but it is a pretty slow process. I think we're still trying to get our hands around get our arms around certain aspects of um, how the law applies in this area, and how it should apply in this area. So I will continue pushing for clarity, but it may take a little time yet. I think that those two things aren't necessarily inconsistent, right? So we want to build strong markets in the United States because that increases prosperity, which in turn helps people, and that's what we ultimately want. We want people's lives to be better. So I think that we can do that on the one hand, but a piece of that is just being open to innovation. Our country has always been one where people with great ideas have come to develop companies to build those ideas up. And so I'd like it to also to be a country where people come and have great ideas in the digital asset space and build their digital asset projects in the US too. And obviously one of the benefits of this kind of technology is that it connects people from all across the world. So you can have people in the US and you can have people elsewhere, but we certainly don't want people to feel they have to go offshore to put one of those projects in place. Yeah, I mean, again, it's something that I'm concerned about because I've talked to a number of people who are developing projects elsewhere, and they've said we'd love to be in the US, but we feel that we can't because of the regulatory uncertainty. And so I think that's the best thing that we can do is provide more certainty. Now, I will say that we have taken some steps to be more open to talking with people about what they're working on. And so we have, for example, peer-to-peer sessions that we run in different cities of the US. People can come and talk to the staff who are working directly on these issues. And so I think things like that can make people more comfortable that they actually can go into the SEC and ask questions. You know, tell the SEC what they're planning to do and ask maybe some guidance about which direction to look. And so I think that will be helpful in drawing some of these people back. But I think ultimately it's going to be the regulatory clarity that will draw people back to the US. Well, it's difficult because there are a number of different areas in which clarity is needed. But I always caution people that a big agency like the SEC, any government agency that has existed for a long time and has lots of rules on the books, it can take a really long time to amend those rules and to provide some new clarity. And one thing that I think a lot of people in this community don't realize is that the SEC does lots of different things. And so we've got a pretty packed agenda. And so it's sometimes hard to find time on the agenda, even if you have a rule ready to go to get that rule finalized. No, but I think it's good that we're getting pushed a little bit too, because sometimes we can be too slow. And that's been a criticism of mine that, innovation is happening. And so the timeline is people want to move forward. And so you need some more guidance to be able to move forward. So I'm sensitive to that and I'm working on pushing us forward. There is a lot of intergovernmental communication, and it's about lots of issues, but this is one of the issues that people are talking about. I think, again, it's a little tricky because some of the questions in this area are about which jurisdiction, what are digital assets and which jurisdiction do they fit within. And so it makes it really important for us to keep talking to each other. So I, for example, talk a lot with one of my fellow commissioners at the CFTC, and we talk about a range of issues, but this is one of the issues that we talk about. Well, I'm impressed that you all were aware of the fact that he's leaving. He's been a very hardworking staffer, and we're sad to see him go. But it's very common for staffers to leave and decide to go and work at a law firm, or I don't know what actually he's doing when he leaves, but that's very normal. So in terms of what it means for enforcement actions in this area, which is an area that he's concentrated on, someone else will step in. And so to the extent that there's still enforcement actions, there'll still be enforcement actions. I think we've been pretty clear in this area that if there's fraud, we're going to go after it. And we've also made it clear that we're going after unregistered offerings. And so I think you should expect that those kinds of enforcement actions will continue as they have. Now, I understand that there's often a lot of uncertainty about the enforcement side, and my point of view is that we really need to be proactive, as you mentioned earlier, in providing clear rules and guidance so that people know what it is they have to comply with, and then we can hold them accountable for not complying with it. So, it's interesting when people ask me questions like that because I always say, look, I'm a regulator, I'm not an innovator. And so I have ideas about where things might go, but I trust much more the sort of insights of people who are actually working on this technology, and about its potential, assessing its potential. But I think the role for a regulator is to say, we need to make sure that people can try these things. And if they succeed, that's going to be because they had a good idea, not because, and if they fail, it's because they had a bad idea, not because the regulation stood in its way. And so that's what I really want to do is kind of open the doors and make sure that we have a level playing field so that people can put stuff out there and then we'll see what works. And that's really exciting. And I think that's what excites me about this space, which is you've got a lot of people who have really interesting ideas about how the future might be different than the present. And they're trying to get those ideas into place to see how they work. Yeah, I can't share any inside information about what might happen, but I think we'll continue working on these issues. I think the staff is going to continue to engage actively with people. I encourage people to come talk to us, come tell us what you're doing. If you think we don't understand something, if you think we've gotten something wrong, come talk to us. You can come talk to me. You can talk to people on the staff, and I think that will help us move forward. That's an interesting idea. Um, we do try to think of creative ways to do outreach. And so um, I think the peer-to-peer events that we're doing and the speaking that the staff who are working specifically on this issue, the staff in our FinHub are doing, I think those are attempts to be a little bit of an SEC Academy. I like that. I like that description of it, though. That name is good. Well, we do a lot of education efforts on lots of other things, like investor education efforts, but we're always thinking about ways to reach out. And I think one thing that this whole crypto space has taught me is that a lot of people just have no idea what the SEC is. And so sometimes getting out there just to explain what it is and what rules might apply to a particular space can be helpful. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Hester.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So that's another super happy Dragon Lucky. This week we had Perry Boring visit from the Chamber of Digital Commerce. They just celebrated 5 years in existence last July. So really good org. We're members. They're doing a lot of good things, especially trying to help in the U.S. with the regulatory stuff. Also happening this week to watch for, the console is moving forward. They just pushed final build to dev environment, so we're in the middle of testing. And I think at some point you'll, of course, get to see the code come through in the open source repo. So watch for that, and that hopefully it'll be well received. It's a lot of work went into it, and it's really nice looking and a lot more functionality, better user experience. The other thing, soon after the show ends, we will be drawing 13 Super Happy Dragon Lucky winners. If you remember the rebrand competition, what's better than a Tesla worth of Tron, that 10 winners will get a rebrand merch package. One winner will be featured on Super Happy Dragon Lucky and will get a set of all of the merch, either the mug or the shirt. And one winner will get an NDA AMA private question where you can ask whatever you want. And then we have one 10-minute Q&A on camera with me. Probably next week, whenever we could do it. It depends on your schedule. So remember to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for tuning in and participating. Next week we'll have more giveaways. Should be fun. I think that's it.